for tuning in to Rebuilding the Black Family with Pastor Carl Lewis and myself, Clement Humphrey. Rebuilding the Black Family is dedicated to discussing principles essential to building strong, productive, and successful families. Please join the conversation by liking, following, and sharing us from our Facebook page, and that's facebook.com/Foundation for Life Church and facebook.com/SPR Live FM. Now, let's join Pastor Carl and me, Clement Humphrey.
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And how are you, sir? We're live on SPR Live FM. Not the Praise Live, but the SPR Live FM is the station where we broadcast. And for those of you who may be looking for us on Facebook, we're not. Our system seems to be down. Have no real valid reason why. But we okay.
It'll come. It's on its way.
It's on its way. It's traveling.
But they can still hear us. You can still hear us.
They can still hear us on SPR Live FM.
They can still hear us on Facebook?
Facebook, they'll probably get the video a little later on. Okay. We'll set that up a little later for you. And but we just can't seem to get the stream going through. Have no clue why.
Okay.
Maybe Facebook lock us off for a little bit. Who knows? We've seen some of the stream testing. Yeah, they're really testing me. Well, we thank God that we're here this evening, this afternoon. For those of you that may be wondering where we are, who we are, and what we are. My name is Claremont.
And I'm Carl Lewis.
Pastor Carl Lewis. Somebody said you have to use your credentials.
All right, that's good. That's good. Pastor Carl here.
Pastor Carl.
Thanks for tuning in. Yeah. Really appreciate you tuning in to us. And like Clement said, we'll see the video on it a bit later. But we've got a good program here today.
Yeah, we do.
And again, if you're new to Rebuilding the Black Family, we come on every Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m. Clement and myself. And the purpose of our program is to inform, inspire, educate, to uplift we could say Black nation, and our agenda is, like in the name, Rebuilding the Black Family, and really presenting, communicating different principles that are essential to building strong, healthy, productive, successful families. And so we're glad that we've been given this assignment, and we're going to keep moving forward with it because it's so critical to the Black community. And so let me say this. I need to say this. Because, when we say Black, and you've alluded to sometimes, right. Some people might hear it. And sometimes our paradigm, our background, how we, our history can maybe shade how we hear things. So sometimes people are hearing the emphasis on Black family. They think we're being divisive, but we're not. But I want to know, I'm constantly looking at studying history. Did you know that in the 1800s, think about this, late 1800s, there were Black people in Congress? Yes, Congress.
I heard that before.
Think about that. Now, the thing is this: you need to understand is that oftentimes there's people, there are key players in authority, and of course the devil's behind a lot of this, is that seeking to divide people. And so a lot of time in the narrative, it's almost getting to divide you, because if you're divided, you don't really see one another and see yourself the way you're supposed to. And so there's always this push to get us to try to believe that we can't work together, that people of all backgrounds cannot work together. Well, the fact is this: the only reason some of that is having such is being very successful in this day and age because people don't know their history.
Right.
And they don't realize Black and white people were leaders in government, were working together for a better unified country. And then when people saw that, certain elements, they went all out to bring division.
Right.
That spawned the KKK. Was a direct agenda to divide the white man from the Black man. And so when we mention rebuilding the Black family, it's not a divisive term. I shouldn't even have to say it, but it's because we want to we are unified better when each part is strong and healthy. And so we want to make sure that we communicate clearly. Also, part of it is, in our website very soon, I'm going to put my Facebook page called Rebuilding the Black Family. And our goal is to put right information historically.
Right.
Because a lot of times people just don't know what they don't know. I mean, if we really told the real history of North America, it would shock you. So people, often we believe the wrong things about ourselves. Oh, it's grossly inaccurate. And so I want to share this thing. I want to talk. Last week we began to look at the area of identity and origin.
Right.
Remember that?
Right.
You remember that,
yes,
right? Okay.
I remember that.
But thanks so much. I just want you to know you've been a real blessing. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Partner with me. And so we said this, that one's origin will help him or her to understand their identity. And so think about it this way. If you don't know your origin, then you can be lied to. If you don't know your origin, and oftentimes your identity can be destroyed, and that has really been the story of much of the history of black people in more recent years, is the lack of knowledge of our origin has robbed us of our identity. And we looked at identity, it determines your value, your self-worth. All these things are tied into understanding our identity. And think about this. I thought about this earlier today, that we can tell how much you value yourself. Think about this, what I'm about to say. We can tell the value, the worth that people have of themselves by how they treat one another. So the people who are who think the best of themselves in a very healthy manner, and those with them, then they're going to treat people in like manner.
Exactly.
So oftentimes if you hate yourself, then it's not a surprise if you are very hateful and mean and destructive to other people. Why? Because the origin of that is inside of you. You are to people what oftentimes you are to yourself. You're destructive to yourself. You're oftentimes destructive to people. And so now I'm going to make a twist here. One of the critical areas that we need to address in rebuilding the black family is how we see and treat women. Now, I know, I'm going to tell you why we got this, why I'm going to go this direction. We are going to be on this identity. I'm going to come back to that. But this is part of this. It's like one of those critical areas, offshoots of this identity and purpose and value. And so, an origin. And so, let me say it again. One of the critical areas we have to address in rebuilding the black family is how we see and treat women. So today we're going to talk about the equality of women.
Okay.
I want to talk about that. And I'm going to tell you why this was inspired. Do you remember you kind of try to get me off guard? I know you try to do that sometimes. You try to throw me off. But do you remember you asked a very good question? You said this, and I think that's why I wasn't planning to go this direction, but earlier this week it just came to my mind. I said, and there's something I thought. But you said, what happens if a man doesn't have, I'm just paraphrasing, right. I'm not completely quoting you, but the gist of a part of what you said, not the whole thing, but the part of what you said, which was very helpful. You said, what happens, what is it like if a man doesn't have a son to carry on his name? I'm going to just narrow it to that, okay? And so, think about this. I was shaving one day this week. It's funny that sometimes there's certain places, I'll get inspired more, and sometimes it's when I'm shaving on the bathroom. Right. So anyway,
I know.
So I'll be honest with you, and my wife was there, and all of a sudden it hit me that, and I'm being completely honest with you, I have never seen. Follow me on this. I'm going to repeat it. I've never seen my girls as less than a boy. Now hear what I'm saying. Now that's not what you were saying, but I'm just trying to say. It's addressing this. So I've never seen my girls as less than a boy. Then and then another thing. Now hear me on this, because it was just all of a sudden. I've never seen my girls not carrying on my name. Now follow me on this carefully, because we're going somewhere on this today. And so when I said that, I realized, well, that's been a fixture in my life for a long time, for years.
Right.
And my wife, Colleen, can attest to that. And so let's turn to this thing here now. What's at the heart of, we could say, the recent protest of women?
Right.
Let's go there a little bit. So, let's say there's that Me Too movement. There's, so all these different hashtags of women in all these different movements. And I'm not trying to validate every women's movement. That's not, the gist of what I'm about to talk about right now. But I was looking at that. Just a little thought of it. What is at the heart of the protest of these women? And let me say this, I'm a man, I understand that, but allow me to maybe share my perspective. Allow me to share, and again, you can comment and let me know what you think, what you agree with, what you might disagree with, what you'd like to add to. Your comments are more than welcome. But in thinking about this very briefly, I thought, again, what is at the heart of the protest of these women? Not just in these recent months and days, but even years, and in some cases over decades. Because oftentimes some things we hear as far as some of these protests, they're not necessarily new. It's just that in certain times and seasons, the spotlight's on it and the voices are amplified.
Right.
Something that is a catalyst, strikes it and it becomes on a larger, massive scale. And so just think about what is at the heart of these protests. And allow me to share this then. Again, I'm a man, but please allow me. It's the desire to be seen for who they really are.
Correct.
That's really at the heart of this. And so it's, again, the desire to be seen for who they really are. So women really saying, listen, I'm a human being, just like a man. Now, going on, let's break that down a little bit. Not valued simply because of their sex.
Right.
Not valued simply because of their beauty. Not valued simply because of their body. Their sexy body, if you say. Not valued solely because of their ability to bear children. Listen to these things carefully. Not valued simply for being able to perform or do what men want them to do. So you got to understand, that's the big cry. That's a big heart cry, if you will. And so there is a cry to be seen, to be accepted, to be respected, simply because they are created in the image of God. So I'm putting that forth before you. That's at the heart of this. So now, let me also say this. What feeds some of that is this. So the failure, where there's a failure to not see our girls as equal to boys, the failure not to not see them carrying on your name, the family name. Now hear me on this. The failure of that has created and will create, if it's continued, certain things.
Right.
I know you're doing two things at once.
Yes, I'm listening to you.
But this is really, really important. You want to say a comment right now?
No, go ahead. I got a plug coming.
All right.
Yeah.
So again, let me say it again. So the failure to not see our girls as equal to boys, the failure to not see them actually carrying on the family name, and then you understand it lessens their value. It lessens their worth. It lessens, we could say, their identity, their value, their worth. All these things are important. And what the result is this then? It results in them being treated as less than a boy, or less than boys, or less than men as they grow up to be women. In some cases, and this is very common in many places around the world, is that women are treated in some cases like property.
True.
Treated like property. Some of them similar to animals. So property. Think about this now. Sometimes it also reinforces that they're used by others, men particularly, for their own selfish purpose. And it also caters or lends to abuse of all kinds. So again, all of that I'm laying the premise is all of this because of a failure not to see our boys as our girls, as boys. So now you know why this come to me. I had to present this today because it's so important. And oftentimes, see, the church is supposed to be a voice, and we're going to look at some scriptures that show us how important this is. So just think about this: one wrong thought, one wrong value system, one wrong direction can lead us down a terrible pathway. So again, I'm saying the devalue of a girl and a woman, or the lesser stature of a woman, I mean, can bring terrible damage into the world. You see what I'm saying? So we're going to talk a bit about this, but go ahead.
Absolutely, and I fully agree with everything you just said. My take on it, and I think I heard you saying this before. I don't think we're talking, at least from my angle, talking about, and I'm not saying this is what you're saying anyway, so folks, if you're listening, this is not what we're alluding to, but it's just to get it clear for those of you who've been listening from last week, because I had some questions being asked myself, right? The thing is, the office of, or the position of one, male or female, they carry two different functions.
Yeah.
And I think people misunderstand what it is. Like, they're both equal, but have two different functions.
Okay. Yep. Good.
And so often, I think we get mixed up or confused.
I see what. Yeah. Yeah.
Function-wise.
So what we've done, we probably, if I'm hearing you right, is you're taking the function,
right,
and adding a superior or inferior value to the function.
Absolutely. Hence the reason why we have, and I'm not afraid to say this, why we have lesbianism and gayism. Because now everybody now is trying to have this equality thing, so we all equal, we all one, we have different functions. As I say before, you can't take two nuts to hold up a wall or two bolts to hold up a wall. It needs a nut and a bolt to hold the wall together. So if we misunderstand or misuse the function, that's when everything goes into chaos.
Good.
You see what I'm saying? So, like for example, a female in the home, we often know that if they get married, the name changes. And we were talking last week about the name change. And the man would love for his name to go on and on. Not necessarily his what's the word I'm looking for? His legacy, but just the name, right? So the girl may have a function in her marriage, in her family. The boy also has his function. And in most cases, we get confused because now when you have two females coming together and saying we want to be married because we love each other so much, one always acts in a masculine form, which is the dominant form, the one who leads. So right there, they misunderstand what it is to be male and what it is to be female.
Well, it's showing, but it's also showing the necessity of the difference.
Exactly. Exactly. Because same thing, you go into a gay relationship between two males, right? A homosexual relationship. There's always one who wants to be dominant, or who is quote unquote the male part, and the other one being the female part, right? And so it's not necessarily like, you know, you're going to workplace and says, well, we want equal rights, we want to be treated equally and so forth, but you have a function. Now there's some females who are very much females, right, in all sense of the word, but maybe 100 times stronger than I am, and I have met a few, right? But growing up as a school child in high school, there was a girl in my class, and I mean, if Peggy's listening on the air right now, she probably, I'm not going to call her name, but she was strong, right? And the thing is, she had a couple of fights with boys, and she beat them.
Oh boy!
Except me.
You didn't fight her, did you?
Oh no, we had a confrontation once, and she got up and slapped me because she thought somebody had called her a name.
I got you.
And she thought, we were friends, we were always friends. And I think the thing that shocked her is because I was never the type to look like I would hit a girl. Right? These guys would always like,
Yeah.
and for her it was a defense that she had to build a defense to fight against them. But when she slapped me, I got up and I said, my mother is the only one that is allowed to do that, and you're not going to do that. And I slapped her back, and she was stunned that I would have done that. I don't even think she even bothered to even come at me, because she didn't know from which end, because I've never ever showed any aggression towards a female. So she thought at this point, I don't know what he's going to do to me. So I'm not even going to try. And at the time, I was into martial arts as well, so that is a bit of a fear too, because, you know, somebody doing martial arts, you don't know which angle it's coming from. But the point was, we have positions. Right? I remember there was a time in the class that we were pushing these chairs and had two of these weakling guys trying to push the chairs, and they couldn't push, and she came and pushed both of them together. Again, that was her role. She had the physical capacity to do so. But we get confused with the anatomy of the human being as opposed to the position or the role of the human being or the office of the human being. So that's what I'm talking about. So for a male carries on the name. The female will carry on the legacy. You see what I'm saying? Two different things. Because we didn't get to finish last week, so I just started sort of waiting till you finish. Because here's the male, he's going to carry on the name of his father. But if his father doesn't have a good legacy, what's the purpose of the name?
Gotcha.
The female, as you touched a little bit on last week, may not carry on the name, but you carry on the legacy of her dad. For example, what's his name? Who recently died?
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham. His daughter still carries on his legacy. See, his son is preaching, but his daughter still carries on his legacy in the sense of how dad was and how dad thinks and how dad operates, right? Interesting enough, my youngest daughter, or my youngest child too, she's the youngest, we were doing this, it's some kind of an online social test or something like that. And we both did the test together and got the same marks. And her comment was, I am my father's child. So, again, now my boys, now when I speak and act a certain way, if there's any females around who knows, and especially my daughters and my daughter's friends and my son's friends as well, it says, that's Kalantini all over there, because I now know where he got it from. Right? So my boy would behave a certain masculine type attitude or say certain things like I would say. But my daughter has another part of me that is saying that's how my dad would behave in terms of trying to stand up for herself, defending herself, and she's a no-nonsense kind of individual. So she pretty much say, I got it from my dad. So there's a difference between the two.
I got you. Now, as you were saying, some thoughts came to my mind. Let me just reiterate, and again, thanks for sharing what you shared there. So the failure, though, to see girls as equal to boys and to actually see them as valuable and carrying on, you said, your legacy, what it's created is certain things.
Right.
And I alluded to some of them. So they're treated less than the boy. They're treated in some cases like property. They're not educated. Oftentimes the boy's educated, the girl's not educated. They're used by others for their own selfish purpose. They're subject to abuse. But as you were talking there, I thought this is what is one of the reasons that other relationships and perverted lifestyles have been embraced.
Correct.
A lot of that has opened the door for that, is when, let's say, if a woman was not treated right, the desire for that equality, if you will, it has to, remember that these desires have to have expression.
Correct.
So oftentimes it gets, or that desire is met or fed by another relationship, even though it's not a right relationship.
Correct.
And so let's just speak about the basis then.
Before you go to that, can I say this?
Yes.
In the sense that when a man or a father does not treat his daughter as the same level or equal as the son, it's based on fear. He's afraid of many things. whatever it is, and it could be stemming from childhood, either from what he saw his father going through. So I may inadvertently teach my son the same fear of having a woman being educated to be equal with you because you're afraid of something.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I got you.
Right? So I may pass it on to my son. My son may not exactly see it as fear, but he just see it as part of the things that we do.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, you'll practice what you see.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but originally it starts off with fears that a woman can be or may be better than you are in some things. And because of that, you try to suppress her. It's the same thing going back to the black family. It was a fear of what the black man is capable of doing. So henceforth, we therefore try to cripple him or to suppress him to make sure that he does not, or his generations to come may not know the truth about how magnificent and how great he was, and make him feel less than. So the rest of us who coming now never knew the history of our foreparents, how great they were. I mean, you go back to great history of the Africas and you see the kingdoms upon kingdoms and the things that they've done. I mean, the pyramids are just one of the many things we talk about. But there was kingdoms built. There were great warriors that came out. I mean, the very nature of the army, of any army across the world, was based, his name just slipped me suddenly, was based on that African fighter, right? Who had the greatest army ever, I think is Shaka Zulu, I think was his name, Shaka Zulu. Great army, and that's where they took his tactics from and built armies, right? Now they may have developed it over the years, but the thing is that when you look at all those stuff, it's fear. Right? Why would I want to suppress you or overtake you if I'm not afraid of what you're capable of? If I'm not afraid of what you're doing, I think what you're doing is great. I have no fear about that. The thing is, I may see this as an enhancement even for myself, but instead, if I'm afraid of you, I'll always want to suppress you. And this is what we go through life, that even in work, somebody don't like what you do because they're afraid that you may be look as superior to them. They'll find a way of cutting you down. Even in the marriage, one partner feels that, oh, I'm afraid that he's going to be going off somewhere or doing something different, and all they think about is how can I chop you off at the knees to make sure it's fear.
Yeah, got you. So then what we do need to really focus on, so spend the rest of the program, we've got to be able to see women right.
Correct.
Got to see them right.
Right, see them who they are.
You got to see them who they are. You got to, and so what helps us a little bit is by, or a lot, I should say. I'm going to read Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. It talks about the creation, all of creation, and then God creates everything, and He sees that it's good. Sees everything, it's good. And in verse 26 of Genesis 1, I'll just read it. It says, "And God said, let us make man." That word "man" is mankind or humankind or the species of man. So that word "man" is not gender specific. That's humankind. "In our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him, male and female created He them, and God blessed them, and God said to them, that's the male and female man, if you will, "Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." So again, God created the species of man. That species of man comes in two ways, if you will, male and female. Notice there's no other kind. It's just male and female. So when someone is born into the earth, then they come in one of two ways. One of two models.
Right.
One of two models.
Correct.
Male and female. And so it's interesting. So it didn't say only the man had the image of God. So that's where we've got to begin, is seeing that, because we're talking about the woman now, we've got to see the woman right, the equality of the woman, is seeing that she was created in the image of God the same way, just like the man was created in the image of God. And so she has a spirit, she has a soul, just like the man, she has a physical body. So really the difference is what? Primarily in her body. And so if we don't see that, if we will undermine God's creation. And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we see from the beginning that if God thought so much to create this woman in the image of God, that we need to make sure she's treated that way. And anytime, just like how you alluded to, if a black man, what made it so terrible, so egregious, of people treating the black man as a non-human.
Correct.
So dehumanize
him, right?
You were treating the image of God then.
Right.
That's an affront to God when you did that. Well, we've got to see it on the same level that when we put down women, when we dehumanize them, when we just look at them as an object, then we're minimizing their creation. We're minimizing that they're created in the image of God and is supposed to be given the honor, the esteem, the respect that we give to men. See that? So that's where that equality understanding needs to begin and be very strong. Then I'm going to look at this other one. I'm going to look at Luke chapter 8, verse 1 to 3. What is interesting, what I found is this: if you look at history, if you look at where the gospel is preached, where it's truly preached, not Christianism or religion of man, where it's truly preached, you see great liberty, like great freedom. You see the elevation of people. And so it's interesting, it says this in Luke chapter 8, verse 1, it came to pass afterward that he went through every city and village, preaching and showing the glad tidings of the kingdom of God, and the 12 were with him. Oh, listen to this. And certain women, which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, man of influence in Herod's court, and Susanna, and many others which ministered to him out of their substance.
Right.
I think it's interesting because sometimes when I read the Bible, I look and I say, "Oh, why does it put that in there?" Because it says the 12 were with him, and it says, and certain women. Well, why would it put it there? Now, one of my conclusions is this: that it puts it in there for a reason, because that wasn't normal in that day. Normally women wouldn't be with men. So there's something about Jesus. He brought a certain understanding of women, an elevation of women, because they weren't just there. Obviously, they're not there just to show their beauty. Thing is this: they were there. Obviously, they'd experienced certain miracles and deliverances as a result of his ministry. But the women that it lists is quite interesting, because one of them is the wife of Herod's steward. That's a person of influence in Herod's household and in his court. But it also says this: and many others which ministered to him of their substance.
So that means they had a function.
They had a function.
Yeah.
And function, some of them, it says substance means wealth.
Yeah.
So these are women carrying money.
Yes, right.
And helping Jesus. Now think about that.
Right.
You see now, especially when, many societies, the women don't have any money. They're not given, we could say, the privilege of handling money. It's handled for them.
Right.
They're given what to spend. Do you see what I'm saying? So here now, we're seeing some women of influence around Jesus. And I think that's quite interesting. And it says, and certain women. Why would it say that? See, that wasn't a normal thing for that day. So we could say his ministry wasn't the regular ministry of the Pharisees and the Sadducees that kept things going according to the status quo. He saw the elevation of women. Another thing too, in Acts chapter 28, we know in a couple of weeks it's going to be Easter. Easter Sunday falls on April 1st this year, which is interesting. I never really, it's April 1st. I knew you didn't say that. And so, people are gonna rehearse the Easter message, and so we should. But it's interesting that the angel appeared to the women first who came to see the sepulcher. Jesus first appeared to those women also. You see that in Matthew 28, and also Mark 16, Luke 24. They then in turn brought the message of Jesus' resurrection to his disciples. So I think that's interesting also. But then I want to allude to this one. I want to go to Acts chapter 1, verse 12 to 15. because we see something that I believe is a continuation of what the disciples saw exemplified and modeled by Jesus. And it says this in Acts of the Apostles chapter 1 verse 12. Then they returned to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is from Jerusalem, a Sabbath day journey. And when they were come in, they went up into an upper room where abode both Peter, James, and John, Andrew, Philip, Thomas, Bartholomew, Matthew, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon Zealots, and Judas the brother of James. These all continued with one accord in prayer and supplication. Watch this now, with the women. There it is again. And Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brethren. And in those days Peter stood up in the midst of the disciples and said the number of the names together were about 120. So this is interesting because in the 120 we don't know how many men and how many were women, but we know that we're both because it actually tells us that in the context. So here again, we see then the women were with the men, because it actually says it. And again, my question is why do you mention that if it was normal?
Now,
you see that? I'm going to go on from here, but go ahead.
You saying if it was normal? Because to me, it could have been as normal as it could have been, except for the fact that things might have changed over the years. Why I'm saying this, because I think it's in Corinthians chapter 14 where Paul had said, teach the women to be quiet. So go home and ask yourself, because you're making too much noise here, you're creating a fuss here. So it tells me that they always had a voice.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
That they always had a voice. They always had a say. They were always outspoken. But it came a point where either it became too much, and somewhere along the line. But again, according to the Sanhedrins and the rest of those guys, it's only men that were in that kind of a office, not the women, and there had to be a reason for that, why it was like that, based on the Mosaic law, right? But coming down to that part, I think they did play a major role, but in terms of the level, in terms of, and I think this is where everything changed for them, and this is why the Pharisees and the Sadducees were all up in arms about Jesus probably giving these women too many rights in saying and doing things and being around and being having such a great function within his ministry, so to speak. That's why they were so upset with him. That was just I've read it and I looked at it from that angle. I thought, what if this is what was happening? That's why they were so ticked off with him.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we're looking at ministries. Remember when you just said that, I thought of this. Remember he said there was a woman taken in adultery. And he says, now, where are thine accusers? Go and sin no more. So in a sense, we see him elevating, we could say.
Yeah.
Being a person of reconciliation and restoration. And what he was showing then, his ministry also showed the hypocrisy of men, that they had one standard for men, another standard for women. Because in a sense, what happened to the man who was in adultery? Or what happened to him? They just isolated the woman. And so what we're saying here, and that's another fruit, when there's not equality, there's not justice.
Correct.
So we could say similar. Let's say when I think my daughter was just doing an assignment recently, and it was a book by I think August Wilson, The Piano Lessons, a black author, and part of what he was showcasing was, or what she was seeing in that book, was the lack of justice. And you still see it today in North American law, where oftentimes black people are unable to get justice. Under the same law, but the law is not providing the same justice to two different people. So what I'm saying here is this: oftentimes men have had their treatment of women for the same thing has been hypocritical because they've had a double standard.
Correct. I see.
See that? So that's what Jesus was addressing, I believe, in his life and ministry, because he wasn't dualistic. He wasn't hypocritical. He had one standard, which was love and truth and mercy. But here's another one I want to show in this real quick. Just a few more before we go here today. It says in Acts of the Apostles, chapter 18, talking about, verse 24, a certain Jew named Apollos, born at Alexandria, an eloquent man and mighty in the scriptures, came to Ephesus. This man was instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in the spirit, he spake and taught diligently the things of the Lord, knowing only the baptism of John. So he was limited in his knowledge. And he began to speak boldly in the synagogue, whom when Aquila and Priscilla had heard, they took him unto them, and expounded unto him the way of God more perfectly. Notice who it mentions: Aquila
And Priscilla.
Mm-hmm. So you see now both were involved in the instruction of this disciple of Jesus, who would go on and become a great instructor and teacher of God's word. So I think that's quite interesting. Then Acts chapter 21 verse 9, talking about Philip's daughter, says the same man had 4 daughters, virgins, which did prophesy. Again, I asked the question, why does it mention it? There's some of those things to speak to certain things, to show that women, we need to affirm their abilities, affirm that they are created in the image of God. That's the equality. And I believe the more you said fear. So what men have to get over, what men have to take control of and really keep out of their lives then, is the fear. See that? Because you said it right. Is the fear. So when you're full of love and mercy, when you're not motivated by fear, you will affirm another person's equality.
Correct.
You'll affirm their potential. You'll affirm their right to be all that they can be. Does that make sense? Now, the only thing is this, of course. So our thinking shouldn't be, well, and this is what you're alluding to. The fear says, well, if she knows, if I affirm her, if I do this, she's going to be better than me. Well, no, that means we got a real problem then. We've got a problem here. And so, but can you see, though, what's implied in that is that oftentimes what men have done then, we've put ourselves in a position of control.
Right.
So fear then will cause you to manifest controlling behaviors. So that she's no longer a free moral agent making her own decisions, but oftentimes we're the ones now, again, motivated by fear, controlling her.
Right.
What she should do, what she can be. So then now she's property, if you will. We're not going to say that, but in that sense, she's property to be controlled by you. Why? Because you're the brains. You're better than her. You know what's right for her. You see what I'm saying? Instead of realizing, no, this is a person, a free will moral agent, created in the image of God. She has a brain, she has an intellect, she has potential, she has abilities, and so she needs to determine with God what to do with those things.
Right.
So we should really be seeing ourselves as coming alongside the women in our lives and encouraging them to be everything that God has called them to be. Everything they've got the potential in God to become. I'm telling you, that is a liberating position. Now, can you imagine then, when you're like them, we and I, as we function like that, it shows how secure we are.
Definitely.
See that? So you're free. You're letting that person be everything you want to be.
Now there's a flip side of that.
Go ahead, talk to me the flip side, as if I didn't know you were going to come with that. But anyway, let's go.
Well, it's not really a flip side. It's the other side.
Well, it's a complimentary.
Yeah, actually not even complimentary to the woman.
Okay.
It's one of the things that, and I've heard women say this. Now when a woman becomes the boss or even the pastor of this, she tries to outdo the man and becomes more aggressive, harder to deal with. And even the women sisters, man, I wish I had a man as a boss because they wouldn't have treated me that way.
I got you.
Right? So it's always now, there's another fear. Our fear is, can I really match up to what my office is, and therefore I'm going to try to outdo and become something that I'm really not.
But, so let's say, that's a great point. What is that motivated by, though?
Fear again.
There it is. It's fear again.
Yeah.
It's oftentimes, women that I've spoken to.
Fear of losing my job. Fear of losing my position.
Fear of not, being good enough.
Yeah.
Again, also it's the fear of being compared to a man.
Right.
So I think sometimes we do have to be aware of some of these things, especially if if women have not been, I'm going to say, allowed to, and that's, I don't even like to say that, if they've not been permitted to be in certain spheres and arenas of leadership, then I guess sometimes we have to put ourselves in their position. Is that, okay, well, they're looking at me, in a sense, there is a parallel here between, let's say, I was reading an article recently, and I think it was just last night or the night before, someone was writing an article about the sports arena. And I think it was Jamel Hill. She's on ESPN.
Okay.
And she got, I don't know if she got demoted because of something she said about one of the
one of her broadcasters?
NFL, one of the NFL owners, I know team owners, won't get into that. But anyway, she was talking about, as a woman, and not just a woman, but she was also talking about black people being in positions of authority. And she said, it's one thing for you to allow us to come through the door, but will you allow us to be ourselves once we're there? I'm just paralleling the two because I think that's quite interesting. It's a kind of a similar struggle, if you will. In other words, now, so oftentimes, can you imagine the pressure? You're in that position, the door's open, but now I've got to show that I'm good enough. So I'm saying that I think that some of the pressures that women have faced is that, yes, you've opened the door, you've allowed me to do this, but now they've got to resist the fear then also. The fear, well, you know what, I might not perform up to par. I might not be good enough. So as you alluded to, there's the fear of losing that position.
Right, and once you do that, though, you cripple yourself more than anybody else. Because, for example, I'm not trying to put myself as a fearless individual. I do have my own personal fears. But if I go into a place, especially when it's quote-unquote that black brother walking into all white area and everybody's looking at him now, what is he going to do? Now, if I'm going there to do a particular function, and I know what I'm going there to do, I don't care what you look at me as.
Good.
I do what I go there to do, whether you like it or not, because not everybody's going to like everything that you do. So get used to that, right? So I remember there was a time, I probably told you the story before, I had to sing at an all-white church. I was invited by this white pastor because he went somewhere else, heard me, and wanted me to come sing. And I walked into the church, and you could see the eyes all over, but I know what I'm there for.
Good.
I wasn't there to please them. I was invited to share my ministry, to share my voice, to share the words of the songs that I'm going to present to them. So they had this little old lady, white lady sitting next to me. Every now and then she looked at, and of course I have my locks. Every 2 minutes, she's looking at me. And I'm thinking to myself, I know for a fact I'm going to blow her socks off. Because right away, I'm thinking, I know what she's thinking. Right? So I went up and I sang my 2 songs. One song in particular that I sang that I remember is Midnight Cry. That was my last song. And I had a standing ovation. Because, wow. So when I came back and just service over, I'm getting ready to, my colleague who shook my hand and, give me put a little something in my hand, and says, thank you so much for coming and sharing your ministry. It was beautiful. Would you come again? I said, absolutely, if you invite me to. Right? The little old lady grabbed me and said, she says, oh, I have to apologize to you. I said, really? For what now? She said, when you came, like if I didn't know, I had a different opinion about you. I thought you were going to sing those Caribbean songs because I'm not into those Caribbean songs. I said, like, for example, reggae or calypso or something like that.
Yeah, the style.
She said, yeah. And I said, you have to be careful how not to judge a book by its cover. Read the content first before you just look at the cover and say it's not going to be a good book. And she paused for a second thinking, dang, this black little boy even reading my mind and telling me what I'm thinking about, because she understood what I know what she's talking about. Don't beat around the bush with me. You saw my here and you think, well, this is a genre he's going to come with, so therefore I'm going to lock him up even before I listen to him.
Good.
Right? But my thing was I afraid? Absolutely not. Anytime I have to sing, though, I'm a little bit nervous. Nervous not because of who the people are, but nervous because, okay, God, I'm put in a position now to represent you. I'm now an ambassador of your kingdom here, and I have to represent you. Am I representing you right?
That's good.
So that is always my nerves.
Yeah, that's good hard to do. Yeah.
Right?
It's good.
It's not the nerves of the fact that I can't do what I can do. I know I can sing. There's no two ways about it. I know I can sing, and I know if I practice good enough, I'll deliver the song properly. But the song that I'm delivering, Lord, is this what you want me to do? And am I representing you correctly?
So, you might have a few thoughts before we go, but let me interject this. When you were talking there, I was thinking then, just a few things. I love the fact that you said, and I think we can encourage the women in our lives to let them know, you know what, you can do this.
Yeah.
Because the lesson from what you said, you knew what you had. That's one thing. So know what you have. Know that you can give what you have.
Right.
But also it does help for us to be encouragers. I'm sure that you've had encouragers in your life, and oftentimes there aren't enough people who are encouragers. You might know, and I think that's a great thing you said about you came knowing,
right,
I've got something. I know what God's given to me. I know my gifts and abilities, and I'm coming to give it.
Right.
I'm ready. I love that. But I think it also helps when we have encouragers who see that in us, see what we have, and encourage us to move in it.
Right.
But then there's something else. I think when you were saying that is the intimidation, not being afraid.
Right.
About, you said a number of things. So knowing what you have, not being afraid, not being intimidated of the place. And also, when you said that, I was thinking this, that in a sense, it's not like that person is doing you a favor. You're grateful. But the thing is this, you have a gift, and you're there to use it.
That's all.
Either receive it or don't.
Not.
And also, you said a couple of things there too, is that you're going to have people, and women are going to face this, that don't like them.
Yeah.
Just like how that woman, she almost yielded to that.
Yeah.
I don't even, he's black, plus he's got locks. Look at that. Didn't even.
She didn't know nothing about me.
But suppose, now think about this though. A lot of thoughts that you were saying there. Suppose you walked in the crowd and you felt people not being it's cold, it's a bit sterile. People looking at you just because of one thing, your blackness. Now think about that. Just one thing. Haven't even heard you. One thing. So they've judged you by their blackness, and it's a negative. That tells you a whole lot right there. Suppose you got offended. I'm just saying.
Right.
Suppose you got offended. See, from what you just said, you communicated, in a sense, you know what you had, you know why you're there. You had a certain boldness, a certain knowing, I've got something to give. But again, suppose it could be overshadowed by getting taking offense.
And as soon as you do that, you lose everything.
That's it.
Everything.
And then what you could draw back. You see? That's it.
Yeah.
Some people have missed opportunities.
I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
Most recently that happened. Most black gospel singers in Canada and in the States have a certain style and have a certain performance, right? I don't normally try to get myself involved in every new song that comes up to go and have this, how you can, how they go down low and come up high and do the theatrics. I don't do all of that. My voice, I believe, is powerful enough, strong enough, stable enough to be able to deliver the song. And if it cannot hit you at the spot where you're at that point in time, I don't need to do all kind of antics and things to get your attention. Right? I must be able to sing. I look back at the days of the old singers, whether gospel or secular. I could go to people like Luther Vandross, for example. He wasn't a guy with a lot of theatrics on stage, but when he sang, his voice alone was captivating. I thought, that's interesting. These guys of old sang, didn't do a lot of theatrics on stage. Even if you want to go back and even, the groups, you had the Temptations and the Four Tops and all those guys, they had certain moves, but that's just part of their play, right? But their voices alone did the work. I mean, you hear voices, I know that voice. You didn't see them, but you heard it, right? So I often think, I must do the same when I reach in front of the public. Now, if I want to dance, Karen, that's just for your entertainment. If what I'm singing to you can't really minister to you, then I'm wasting time. So I went to a particular function the other day, and there are other singers before me and after me, and they sang a certain way. I don't sing that way. So I knew exactly, my song is like about 25 years old, and they've probably heard it a million times by different people. And of course, we have this thing where there's urban black gospel, and then there's the Christian gospel known as the white stuff. And I was singing the Christian gospel known as the white stuff. But my thing is, I was singing a particular song for a particular reason. And I said, you know what, I'm going to deliver the song because somebody there needs to hear when you're up against a struggle that shatters all your dreams and your hopes been cruelly crushed by Satan's manifested schemes, and you feel the urge within you to submit to earthly fears. Just praise the Lord. Somebody needed to hear that. I don't need to perform a theatrics for that. I don't need to go, I don't need to do all of that kind of stuff. I just need to sing that clear enough, melodically enough for you to understand, feel it, and say, yeah, that's what I need.
That's good.
So I had to sing that. And when I saw all these different singers went up before, I remembered in my earlier days of singing, I used to have this little bit of fear, can I match and would they receive me? And then somebody spoke to me once and says, what you have to do at that moment, God chose you for that time, for that moment. Just think on that. And that's what I changed. So I went and delivered my stuff, did what I had to do, and came off. Just the one song. I wasn't doing many songs, just the one song. And I came off. I didn't look back to see how many people were overblown by what I did. The interesting thing is, when I came out of the program, a lady came to me. She says, was that you singing up there? I'm like, yes, I was. She said, oh my goodness, what a voice. She said, I had to look again to realize if it was a recording or if it was somebody actually singing. I said, thank you. She says, that song really hit me here. And I thought, that's what it was supposed to do. You were wondering whether it's an album, a record being played, or somebody singing, because you didn't see much movement from me, except you heard and it hit you where it's supposed to hit. That's the same thing what a woman needs to do. If you know who you are, your value, your worth, and everything else, you don't need to perform like a man or be like somebody else. Be you.
That's it.
Deliver what you have been put there to deliver. You're there for that moment, at that time that God has placed you there. Only you can do what you can do. Nobody else.
Excellent.
If you fall short of that, it's on you.
Be yourself.
Be yourself.
That is so well. That's it. That is so well done. I'm not going to add to it. Thank you so much, Clement, for sharing that. Again, thank you for tuning in today. So, ladies, you've heard the message. Be yourself. You're empowered, gifted, skilled. You're creating the image of God. Be yourself and be what God's called you to be. Well, until next time, please check us out on Facebook, foundationforlife.ca, SPR Live FM, and Rebuilding the Black Family. Give us your comments, feedback. We love and appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next week.
Foundation
Bye-bye.
for Life Church. Also, visit us at foundationforlife.ca, where you will find some free life-building resources. Join us next time for another edition of Rebuilding the Black Family. Until then, build your life and family on the sure foundation of Jesus Christ.